This is the third video lesson that I'm doing, continuing with the topic of walking bass lines. So what I've covered so far is root, 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 approach, root, approach, root, approach, root, chord, 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 and root, chord, chord, approach. I covered those in the previous video, so if you haven't checked those out, you want to check those out probably to start from the beginning and see how this whole thing works. So again, in this week's video, it's going to be the same routine as the other two, where I'm just demonstrating. I'm going to come up with a routine, and I'm going to demonstrate the routine over a 2-5-1 in C major, and then give you examples on how you can start implementing these routines. So let's just get right into it. This week, I'm going to start with chord, 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 chord. So this is the first routine where you don't have to start on the root, and you don't have to target the root of the next chord. You can actually start on any chord tone you want, and you can target any chord tone you want from the next chord. And this is going to have a ton of possibilities. So you're going to want to spend a lot of time exploring this routine. So let's get into one. 1, 2, 3, 4. More time. All I did was go up the arpeggio, D, root, third, 5, 7, connecting to the third of the G7, down by half step, to the root, down to the fifth, down to B, up to C. So all chord, 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 chord. And you don't have to always use the different chord tones. You can stay on a chord tone. You can repeat a chord tone. So let's do I start on the fifth, third, root, 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 fifth, seventh, seventh, to C. So you can repeat them as much as you want. Let's do one more example. Here I did this flat seventh, fifth, third, root, flat seventh, fifth, third, root, C. Let's do another one. How about fifth, seventh, fifth, third routine? So that's a fixed routine that I use through the D minor and the G7. You can do that. You can do stuff like, I'm going to do third, fifth, root, 7. Let's do that. Third, fifth, root, 7. Third, fifth, root, 7. So third, fifth, root, 7th, third, fifth, root, 7th, root. So you could do fixed routines where you sequence them. You can mix it all up. You can do whatever you want. Here's one more aspect to this chord, 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 chord thing. You could put an approach note in between these chords if you want. You don't just have to do chord, 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 chord. Maybe you do chord, approach, chord, approach. For even more sophisticated stuff. In the first lesson, I showed you how to do root, approach, root, approach. Okay, well, just replace the root with a chord tone. So now you can do chord, approach, chord, approach. How about this one? Root, approach, 7th, approach from a half step below to the third of G7, approach to the root of G7, approach to the third of C major. So the root, descend a half step as a half step approach to the flat 7th, flat 7th, half step approach into the third of G7 from below, B flat, to the third, half step approach to the root from above, half step approach from the third of C major 7, or to the third of C major 7 from a half step above. So or you could do D, D flat, D, A flat, G, G flat, F, D flat, C. So chord, 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 chord can get you a lot of traction. If you're just sticking to chord, 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 where you're doing unique chord tones every beat, or chord, 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 where you're repeating some of the chord tones, or chord, 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 where you're actually putting in half-step approaches into these chord tones. So now it becomes chord, approach, or you could do chord, approach, chord, chord, or chord, chord, approach, chord. So, whew, already right there. That I could spend all day just messing around with that. So after a while, and you can see how you're going to want to get into your ears. You're going to want to practice these routines until you get sick of them, and then you're going to just want to let go. Because there's no way you can think about all this stuff when you're playing through changes. So like I said, the whole point of this series is to really take you from not knowing how to do walking bass lines to understanding how walking bass lines get put together, then getting good at walking bass lines to where it becomes second nature. Then the final step is just improvising these walking bass lines and improvising them by ear, because there's no way you're going to be able to sit here and figure out math and play these tunes. I'm already having a hard enough time just remembering what I played to show you, because it's instinct now. I don't think about the routine. That's what I did when I was learning how to do these things. So that's what you want to do. So the last routine I want to show you for this week is just chord, chord, chord approach. And as I mentioned a minute ago, you can put approach notes anywhere you want to approach chords within the given chord or approach chords that you're targeting. But, you know, just for the sake of practice and doing things one thing at a time and not getting too bogged down, let's just do chord, chord, chord approach for now. Chord approach is more advanced than what I'm about to tell you, so maybe I would do that later on. So like I said, the first part of this video is chord, 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 chord. And then I was supposed to just talk about chord, chord, chord approach. But then I got carried away and did chord approach type stuff. So yeah, you can do that. I'm going to get back to, I'm going to get back to earth right now and just do chord, chord, chord approach. So here's chord, chord, chord approach. So here I started on the third, went to the fifth, to the seventh, approach G by half step above, down to the seventh, down to the fifth, third, fifth, seventh, approach, root, 7, 5, approach, root. So let's do one more. Let's do this example. 7th, 5th, 3rd, half step approach from above into the 5th of G, to the 3rd, to the 7th, half step approach, to the 5th of C major. So, and then we'll do one more. Let's start on the 5th. I like that. I doubled that chord to chord. So 5th, 5th, 3rd, half step approach into the 5th of G from above. That's a good one. Fifth, fifth, third, half step approach, fifth, down to the third, down to the root, down to the flat 7, to E, the third of C major. So as you can see, there's a lot you can do just with chord, 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 and then chord, chord, chord approach. And then if you want to mix it up and get heavier, chord approach, chord approach. So I would spend time, just like I mentioned in the other videos, just do it trying to get from D minor to G, then work on D minor to G7 to C, then work on some kind of a turnaround, 1625, 2516, 3625, whatever kind of turnaround you want. Then run through it with a 12-bar blues, and then run through it on a tune, and then start increasing the tempo of that tune. And then you'll start to see how these routines work and what they sound like. And once you get really good, once you can get through that final part where you can run a particular routine through a tune, now start mixing them up. Now start mixing up root, all of the previous routines that I gave you in the other videos. So you got root approach, root approach, root approach, root chord, 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 root chord, chord approach. Now you have chord, 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 chord approach, chord approach, chord approach. That's a ton of routines right there to work on. So when you really get comfortable with these, start mixing them up. That's when you're almost there. If you can get through a tune while you're mixing these things up without having to think about it, you're basically playing by ear. You're almost playing by ear because you have to. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do it. Like if you can get through a tune and you're mixing these things up and you're getting through the tune, you're right there. And the next step is to just totally let go. Totally let go of all this stuff and let your ears take over and experiment with that. Don't be afraid to turn off your brain and let your ears run the show. That's the whole point. That's where you want to get to. So good luck with that. And yeah, it should be pretty fun. I love these routines. I could spend all day just on chord approach, chord approach. So, all right, right on. I'll see you in the next one.